Well, I mean, like, I ended up going to Brandeis or something, and all I did was a bowl of cereal, so I just kind of ate them. They're stupid, you know what I mean? Well, I actually have to send it to go to product and like, that would be the worst.
And then, yeah.
Yeah, and then they have to, obviously, she needs to action. Oh, yeah, there's not like a feature.
Whose face is that?
What's that?
Whose face is that?
That right here?
Yeah.
That's me.
When was this?
Oh, that was a few years ago, and 80 pounds heavier. Well, it makes me look older, doesn't it? Oh, did I make those announcements in the wrong class? Yep. Dang. That bites.
How many did you just let out today?
So much.
Is it too bright with those windows open? Or does it matter? You care? Okay. I'll close this up here. I was posting a whole bunch of announcements today, and I just realized I was in my my class sandbox in Canvas. So I will move these over later. But the way Blue Line works is, every class is a different file folder, basically. And some faculty, including myself, have what's called a sandbox. In computer terms, what a sandbox is a kind of like your own play area. Wherever you put stuff, it doesn't affect anything else. So if I'm trying to demonstrate to like Keith Olson, who's a new adjunct teaching a couple of finance classes. I wanted to show him how to create a quiz and make some settings in it. I open up my sandbox, and I can enroll him in it. I do some practice stuff, and you guys don't see it. Because if I created a quiz to demonstrate something in this class, and then you saw it, you might panic and wonder what's going on. So I forgot that I was logged into my sandbox instead of our class and made a bunch of announcements. So let's see, who's doing the computer person of the day? Okay. Who's our person?
Philip John Eskridge.
Yep.
So he was born in 1937 in Jacksonville, Florida. He completed a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering at University of Florida, and then later worked at the Army designing a radar system using computers, IBM, and NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. He led the development of the original IBM personal computer and the development of the entire industry of manufacturers of IBM computers. He began developing IBM PC in 1980 with the goal of developing a low-cost personal computer to compete against other computer companies like Apple and Commodore International. The first model of IBM PC, model 5150, was successful after other unsuccessful tries of making like a mini computer. And Steve Jobs offered him a $10 billion job as president of Apple.
Yep. What happened to the poor guy? Yep. Yeah. He died in a plane crash, unfortunately. Yeah. He was. His middle name is Don, so sometimes he went by Don, sometimes he went by Phil. He was the head of the IBM's Entry Systems division, which in the late 70s, early 80s was kind of like being shipped off to Siberia when you're in the Army and you do something wrong. It was kind of a nowhere division. And the IBM wanted to come up with a personal computer because companies were buying IBM mini computers and mainframes, but they weren't buying, they didn't have a small computer to compete in that market. They were buying Apple's, Tandy's, Heath Zenith machines, things like that. So at this time, if you ever study marketing, Marketing 319, they probably will talk about this. When you bought an IBM computer, they bundled everything together. That's against the law to do now, but bundling meant that if you bought an IBM, say a mainframe computer with an IBM printer, you had to buy IBM paper, you had to buy IBM ribbons, IBM floppy disks, everything. It would violate the warranty, and IBM would refuse to come service it if you didn't put IBM ribbons in your printer. I see you guys laughing thinking, that's stupid. Back then, it was called bundling, and it was legal. It wasn't until some lawsuits were filed in the 1970s and finally settled in the 80s that companies can't do that. So if you buy a Ford F-150 today and you put, Delco spark plugs in it instead of Motorcraft, Motorcraft is Ford's brand, they can't refuse to service the warranty on it, that kind of thing. So that bundling is now illegal. So what IBM at that time, they wanted to have a complete solution for everything. So on August 12th of 81, for some reason I remember that date, Don't ask me to remember my ex-wife's birthday. I couldn't even remember when we were married, so maybe that's why she's my ex-wife. Anyway, August 12th of 81 was when it was introduced, and it became a very successful machine. His career rose like a rocket. He was on the path to maybe becoming chairman of IBM. Unfortunately, he was flying with his wife in just a regular commercial flight. I think it was what they call wind shear. The plane was landing crosswind. A whole bunch of people were killed. Unfortunately, he and his wife were kind of a promising career. I think it was in his late 40s, early 50s. Unfortunate. Who knows what the IBM, the whole PC market would have been like. He was a big advocate, and I talked about this before when we talked about Steve Wozniak, of the open architecture. The original IBM model 5150 And the succeeding model, the 5170, had open architecture, meaning that you could design a circuit card and plug in different hardware to it, unlike other computers at that time. And so companies like Hercules and AST and a bunch of them I can't remember now, they developed expansion cards and the ability to hook up printers and much better monitors and graphics cards. IBM had a color graphics system that was like $1,000, and competitors had one that was like $250. So there was all kinds of growth there. So he's our computer person of the day. Unfortunately, he passed away. So the announcement that you haven't seen, I put this up here. Cisco is buying Jasper Technologies. You're probably saying, okay, well, what does Cisco make? CISCO, the computer company. Yeah. Yeah. They make networking gear. So when we talk in Chapter 6 about switches and routers and firewalls and everything, Cisco is the company that makes that. Whenever you talk to computer people and they say, we're a Cisco shop or we're a 3Com shop, typically that means that they buy all products in that, in networking gear or whatever from a certain company. So the university has standardized on Cisco for most of our network gear, as we'll see right around the week before and after spring break. They are the huge presence in the networking gear market. They are buying a company called Jasper Technologies. Jasper, they make products for what's called the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things means hooking up all kinds of things to the Internet. Refrigerators, microscopes, all kinds of products. And they are the company that does that. So you don't want to have a full-featured computer on your refrigerator, but it sure would be nice to maybe be able to get a monitoring when your refrigerator goes down or when there's certain products aren't in it. Being able to hook up your car to the internet, like if you have a Tesla, you can do that already. Okay? So they are a company that's been pioneering and been very successful in that. Cisco is the big enterprise class networking company now buying this company doing small internet things. So we'll see what happens with this. Okay. And I'll update you that here in a minute. For those of you that use Google Chrome, how many Chrome users here? Okay, yeah, a lot of us. Google has, in the last year or so, has been especially putting more fraud alerts and malware, phishing type alerts on there. Have you ever gone to some websites and it looks like a download button to download a product, but it's really a link to download their downloader or a false install? Yeah, a couple of you shaking your heads. I hate that. There's a website that I used to love to go to. Now I kind of dread going there. Called SourceForge. They were bought out a couple of years ago, and it's all kinds of open source software, free stuff you can download. And the company that bought it has started monetizing it with ads, and you click it to download a piece of software, but it really wants to download their installer that puts spyware in your machine, and then it downloads the software you want. So unless if you're the kind of person that clicks okay, download, install, done, you get all kinds of, I'll say it, crap on your machine. If you really have to watch what you're downloading and look around, Google now is going to start capturing that and alerting you to it. That's a good thing. This will force the webmasters of those sites to stop doing that. So just another security thing from Google. Anybody use the SwiftKey keyboard on their smartphone? I think almost all of you are iPhone users. And up until iOS 9, you couldn't change the keyboard. You had to use the Apple keyboard that came with the operating system. Android users forever have been able to use alternative keyboards. And SwiftKey is a little bit of artificial intelligence. you log in, like when I installed this on my Android phone, you log in and create a SwiftKey account. And then it monitors as you type. And if you start typing the same words all the time, so my mom and dad live 6240 something street. Whenever I text my 5 siblings, hey, who's going to shovel the snow at mom and dad's, we just abbreviated 6240 because we know that's their house, rather than type out mom and dad. So as we're arguing about who's going to go over and do the snow for mom and dad, it learns that as soon as I type a 6, it pops up 3 choices, and one of which is 6240, and all I have to do is hit a tab or a space, and it puts that in there. So it starts learning your abbreviations and your common phrasing. So if I start saying, start typing DOI, it puts DOIT capitalized the whole bit. It's very popular on Android, and with iOS 9, you can now start using alternative keyboards, so you're not stuck using Apple's keyboard. So when I upgraded to iOS 9 on my phone, I brought SwiftKey along with it. So now on both phones, it starts learning from that. Microsoft has bought SwiftKey, $250 million. You know, that's not a lot of money for Microsoft. But what they're doing, Microsoft has been buying a lot of these artificial intelligence companies. We'll see more about this in a later chapter toward the end of the book, at the end of the class. But they're looking at incorporating some of this artificial intelligence in their products. Google, the guy that's been in charge of search, and I've got drawn a blank on his name right now, he's retiring, and the head of Google Artificial Intelligence is now becoming head of search. So what you're going to see is more of this predictive learning and things. When you say artificial intelligence, a lot of you start thinking, you know, in complete robots that'll talk to you about anything. What we'll really see, and we'll talk more about this in the last couple chapters, is more of like expert systems. So you might know somebody that's an expert in a certain area. So I've got a guy that does my taxes. I would never ask him to repair my car, would never ask him, what's the best restaurant in town, but he's an expert on taxes. And so that's what you see is more of this artificial intelligence experts in certain areas. So we'll talk more about that later, but Microsoft now has bought SwiftKey, and I'm kind of anxious to see what happens. Will they still sell it, or will they incorporate it in Microsoft products, and then I can't get it anymore on Android and iOS? As we've seen when we talked about Postini, the spam filter service that Google bought, they end-of-lifed it, and then they incorporated it into Gmail. Will this happen with SwiftKey, that they bought it and end-of-lifed it, or will it be like the product I mentioned a class or two ago, Waze, W-A-Z-E, that traffic app that Google bought? They're incorporating some of the Waze features in Google Maps, but Waze is still a standalone app and still supported, and just like it always was before, only better. We'll see. Okay. Mark your calendar, Apple people, March 15th. That's the next Apple product announcement date. What's probably going to happen, again, this is the rumor mill. Some of you guys probably all like the bigger phones, right? The 6S and the 6 Plus. Some people still like the smaller phone, and Apple has still been selling the 5S. Well, they're going to update it, because it hasn't been updated for a while, to the 5SE. That's what the rumor mill is calling it. A new iPad Air, the iPad Air 3, probably updates to the Apple Watch. Probably not Watch 2.0, but updates to the Watch software to make it work a little better. And then some bands, some more fashion stuff to it that they could do. Apple makes their own processors for their iOS devices, for the phone and the iPad. And so it's the A series, and they're going to be up to the A9 with a motion coprocessor, so that when you do something with it, it catches the accelerometer and the movement that you're doing. A smaller battery. Now, show of hands, how many can get through a full day on their iPhone without charging the battery? Yeah, pretty much all of you, or do you have to charge it? Okay, yeah. The thinner the phone gets, the smaller the battery, the less it lasts. I mean, they can make it more efficient. My Android phone, I charge a couple times a day. If I'm going to be sitting in my office for 30 minutes on the phone, I'll plug that sucker in. My iPhone, where am I at? I took it off the charger at 5:15 this morning, and I'm still at 81%. Okay, I charged my Android phone twice today already. So the iPhone has better battery life, but it'll have no 3D touch on the 4-inch phone, etc. Okay, maybe a rear-facing LED camera, maybe 4 speakers like the iPad Pro. Okay, yeah, we'll see. But March 15th, and as we get closer to that date, the more the rumors will come out. All right. Again, for those of you that watch Apple, Business Insiders, it's not a bad website. It's got a lot of short, quick business and tech articles. What's interesting is that right now, a lot of people are kind of ragging on or dissing Apple in the trade press. You notice their stock price has been down a little bit. Have you ever heard the name Walt Mossberg? Okay, Walt is an industry reporter. He was the tech reporter for the Wall Street Journal for 12 or 15 years. And he's very well respected in the trade press, especially for his relationship with Apple and IBM and Motorola, a lot of the big companies. He quit the Wall Street Journal. They had some kind of disagreement. Maybe he was fired, maybe he quit, we don't know. Or maybe one of those things, quit before you're fired. But he went to a website called The Verge, TheVerge. And that's where he's writing now, and he has a podcast every week that's kind of entertaining to listen to. Anyway, he's always been a big Apple, and I'll use the term fanboy. You heard that before? Yeah. A fanboy is somebody that just likes a certain product or certain brand. No matter what you do, they can do no wrong. One of my shooting buddies is a big Glock guy. And Glocks are the best thing since sliced bread and canned beer. Okay. Another one of my buddies is a big Chevy guy. He's a GM certified mechanic, so he's a genuine Mr. Goodwrench. And he just hates Fords. He just rags on my Fords and all the stuff all the time. And he's a big Chevy, so you can call him like a fanboy. Walt has been accused of being an Apple fanboy because he loves Apple products, writes highly of them, except recently. He's been coming out about their hardware is wonderful, but their applications and some of their background things like iCloud are not working well. Okay. There's another article in, what's the name of that website down here? Daring Fireball, that writes a lot of Apple stuff. And he's also mentioned this. And what I'm seeing is some synchronization issues with the iCal and Exchange servers, some issues with the Mail.app, little things that are just annoying that Apple really hasn't kept up. And I think part of it is their rush to update new products, to get out, Yosemite, when that operating system upgrade came for your MacBooks and your iMacs. It was rushed. There were a lot of bugs in it because Apple now is on a new operating system every year. And when you have to get that out every year, you're going to have bugs. It used to be they'd issue a new operating system when it was ready. One time it was almost 3 years. So I think they're kind of in a rush. The hardware is wonderful, maybe some of their apps. But it's kind of interesting when you get a couple people writing in the trade press. Now, not that many people read the Daring Fireball. It's like an industry tech insider thing. But when Walt Mossberg starts writing, people start paying attention. And lastly here, want to update you. The internet has had some issues. Okay. I think we'd all agree with that. Come to found out today, we've been under attack. Yep, the university. Our network has been under what's called a denial of service. And sometimes you'll see this as distributed. So DDoS, distributed denial of service attack. What's happening is one or more computers in China have been trying to break in or slow down some of our Oracle servers. Now, Oracle is a enterprise-wide database, and Oracle is the back end of the Nest. Or for those of you, when you guys go into the Nest, anything you do is based on an Oracle database, a series of them. When faculty or staff members of the university, you'll hear, if you're a work study, you might hear an administrative assistant say, I'm going to go into Banner and order this product, or I'm going to check how much money we have in our account by going into Banner. Banner is the university's financial system running on the Oracle system. So it's huge. It's vital to the functioning of the university. Some multiple addresses distributed coming from more than one place are attempting to either break in or deny the service of our Oracle servers. Now, a denial of service attack is now always trying to break in. So think about if you go down to see Catherine Kelly in the dean's office, and you want to see the dean. You want to petition for Cupcake Thursday. You think the dean's office should buy cupcakes for every business student on Thursdays. Okay? If one of you goes down to Catherine Kelly and says, I want to see the dean and talk about Cupcake Thursday, she can talk to you. She could probably talk on the phone a little bit. She can, handle one person coming into her office. If two of you go down and start talking to Catherine and say, we need to see the dean, I want to talk about Cupcake Thursday, hey, we need free parking, it's snowing outside, all of a sudden talking to two people is tough. If all of you go down, all 16 of you, to try to talk to Catherine at the same time, and you all start talking about different things, even if you're all talking about Cupcake Thursday, there's no way she can talk to 16 people at the same time. And all she can do is say, please hold just a minute, let me talk to you. Get out of my office, quit stealing my water, whatever. And you have just denied her answering her phone, answering her email, helping the dean, doing anything else. That's what happens with servers. It gets so many requests to do something. It floods, and all the server can do is just try to answer all those requests at one time, and it stops serving the databases out. So, DoIT has identified and blocked those addresses. All those servers, and they're called middle tier. Don't worry about what that is, but they're kind of in the middle of the processing chain of servers. They block them from off-campus access. So the only way to get to them is being on campus. And so anybody from the outside world, not just those addresses in China, but everybody can't get to them. You need to be on campus. That really doesn't affect, it affects a few off-campus users who are not directly connected to Creighton. But they had to do it. As a result, it was flooding the network with so much bogus traffic that it slowed everything else down. So not only were all of you in Catherine Kelly's office, but you're also blocking the entire dean's office. So if anybody tried to come in to see the dean, or Assistant Dean Wells, or our Kelly, our admissions person, or Lauren, our marketing person, nobody could get in the dean's office because you're all denying the service trying to get in. So it's kind of the human equivalent of a network denial of service attack. So DoIT thinks it's under control, but it took a while to identify where it was coming from, what they were trying to do, etc. Well, I'll hold off telling you about the VPN, but around March 12th, that's the Saturday before you come back from spring break. So that's the second Saturday, right before classes start Monday the 14th. The university is going to be shutting down our entire network. I've mentioned this before, and I'll remind you again. But if you're on campus 8 in the morning on Saturday, March 12th through 5 or 6 p.m., nothing's going to work. No internet, no printing, the campus telephones. Your cell phone will work because that's the Verizon or AT&T network. But we're doing do it, is doing some major upgrades to our infrastructure. Think about this as you've got an older car, you've got a hand-me-down car, it's your mom's 10-year-old Honda Civic with 150,000 miles. And all of a sudden the engine dies because the oil pan fell off. Well, in order to replace that engine, you've got to park the car, take the engine out, put the new engine in. That's kind of what Do It is doing. They're taking a whole bunch of the Cisco gear out that we have, redoing the server racks, putting the new Cisco gear in. So just like you can't rebuild the engine without parking the car or taking the old engine out, the same thing with what the network team is doing. Yes?
What will it change after the whole thing?
Right now, our connection to the internet is limited to 1 gigabit. Okay? We are going to now have a limit of 10 gigabit, so significantly faster. The other thing is redundancy. Right now, we have one router that connects us to the outside world. When they have to take that down for repair, or if it were to go out, we lose our connectivity with the outside world. They're putting in a second one, and it's going to be bigger and able to handle the faster network connection. We also right now have a limit of 2 internet providers, and we have 2. If we ever want to add a third or a fourth to get a faster internet connection or for more redundancy, we can't do that now. So by adding this new router, a second router, and some other network gear, they're allowing for future growth. The other big thing is disaster recovery. That's Chapter 12. Right now, if something happens to the old gym where a bunch of the Do It stuff is located, we're shut down. So adding a disaster recovery location will allow, we could have some redundant network equipment in another location that can pick up the slack. Because the old gym's 100-some years old, you know, it's got sprinkler systems and fire protection, but something could happen. So I'll let you know. I've got a statement from Do It about what they're doing, etc. You'll be enjoying spring break, etc. So when you come back, that's Sunday the 13th. Class is Monday the 14th. The network should be rocking and rolling. Cross your fingers. The university is switching to Canon from Xerox. I went to a meeting, 2 weeks ago. And what's happening right now, Canon, they flew in a team of 12 or 14 people. And they are going everywhere on campus. They started at the East End and they're working their way west. And they're looking at saying, what kind of printers do you have now, copiers? What kind do you need? Do you need more? Do you need less than you have? What about the student printers? There's 28 student printers. Is that too many? Is that too few? Are they in the wrong location? You know, et cetera. So the assessment phase is what's going on right now. Okay. So that's what's going there. All right. Any questions? Awesome. Did you enjoy the snow day? All right. Is the rumor true that they take the trays out of the cafeteria so that you can't take them and go sledding? Okay. Yeah. It was always, the old joke was when I was a student here, they had the blue cafeteria trays. And on days when it was snowing, they would not give you the trays because students would steal them and then go out on a hill and slide down. All right. All right. Okay. We pretty much finished email. I wanted to start Tuesday talking about the command line interface and set up your accounts on our Grackle server. And it's kind of a 2-day thing, Tuesday and Thursday. Since we didn't have class Tuesday, I don't want to start it today, so I'm going to move that to next week. So check the calendar. There's some links to some things. I will have your Grackle accounts ready. If you don't know what Grackle is, don't worry about it. Anybody in here running a PC? I think I see all Macs. Awesome. Because I was going to have the Windows users download a program to connect to Grackle, but since you're all Mac users, it's all built in. All you need to do is use Terminal. Anybody in here ever use Terminal on your Mac? Yeah? Cool.
It was for research.
Okay. So yeah, you've used Terminal, so that's what we're going to use. And don't worry, I'll explain it all Tuesday. Okay. So what I want to do today is just talk a little bit about chapter 1 and then start, if we have time, we'll start the command line interface. I haven't really talked much about the book, just because we've been doing some other things, but let's talk a little bit about the book. And what I've done is, I'll do this periodically through the class. These are the slides from the textbook author. And they're in the files area. Just go to the textbook folder, and underneath there are the slides. And if you've looked in the book, you'll see that there's chapters and chapter extensions. So the chapters are the big things. Chapter extensions are extra topics. So like when we talk about networking, there's a chapter extension on the internet. Computer hardware, there's a chapter extension on that as well. We won't do all the chapter extensions. But let's kind of breeze through chapter 1. I've cut out some of the slides, added a few other things in here. Just want to emphasize some important stuff that's in the book, and then we'll do the command line orientation next week. If you've looked at, oh, I got to say hello. Okay. If you've looked at chapter 1, hopefully you have. Maybe you've read it twice because it's so thrilling. Okay. They open up every chapter with a case study. Okay. Jennifer, this biking company. Okay, yeah. All right. What they talk about is, in today's industry, when you go out and get a job, okay, or internship, that kind of thing, what do you need? Is the goal of this class to teach you to be an Excel whiz? No. Okay. The goal of this class really is to give you an overview so that when you go to work for a job and your boss sits you down in front of a computer, or they tell you to access the company's Unix server, you have to go into terminal on this Mac. Or if he tells you, you need to SSH into this Unix server, and at the command prompt, run this command. So rather than sitting there with big wide eyes going, I have no idea what you're talking about, you'll have some idea. Okay? So the idea here is to kind of expand from what we learn in class. I won't show you everything about databases or spreadsheets, but you know enough how to navigate around and then to look, how to get resources, how to expand your knowledge with it. Or if you learn Microsoft Excel, and all of a sudden you get hired by a company and they use Google Docs, and they use Google Sheets. Well, it's a different kind of spreadsheet, but all spreadsheets are fairly similar. They all do similar things. Okay. So if you, for example, if you take stats, and you learn a little bit about how to do statistical analysis in Excel, okay, and then you get a job and all of a sudden you're using SAS or SPSS. Well, you can kind of take that knowledge and expand it for what you're doing. The big thing, and I'll harp a little bit on some of the students that come and see me, is you don't always experiment enough. And by that I mean look around and play. One other BIA professor has her students downloading some software, an open source software program, and they're trying to get it to install, and we've run across an incompatibility between people with brand new Macs or they've upgraded to El Capitan and this open office software. And if the version that the faculty member wants doesn't work with El Capitan. However, if you've upgraded the OS, you can downgrade to the next software down of the application software. Anyway, without going into details, there's some experimenting and some things you could do. Some people just give up right away. I'm sure you've got friends like that. If it doesn't work right away, they give up. Other people will sit down and try to figure out why something doesn't work. Google or Bing or Yahoo, okay, your favorite search engine, is your friend. Oftentimes you can find discussion boards, forums, other resources to help figure out what's going on, because chances are you're probably not the first person trying to run El Capitan and OpenOffice 4.1.2. And so on some of the discussion boards, we found some workarounds that other people have done, which have worked in half the cases. Okay? So feel free to to play around as well. Collaborating means working together. We'll talk about some collaboration tools as well. Right? All right. Moore's Law. Gordon Moore. No relation to Roger Moore, the second best James Bond. Okay, sorry. Probably Sean Connery, maybe the best Bond. Gordon Moore, not Roger. Gordon Moore is one of the founders of Intel Corporation. And he came out with the famous Moore's Law. Every computer book will quote this. That the number of transistors per square inch on an integrated circuit doubles every 18 months. In other words, processing power increases dramatically. If you look at, I erased it, the IBM PC from 1981 and the Intel processor, the 8087 that it used, versus the Intel i5 that you buy today on a high-end machine, that has held up. Okay, so as we're seeing, the processors get faster. Disk storage gets faster and cheaper. Networking speeds get faster. This enables companies like, Google with YouTube to offer you to, upload your videos for free to the world. And you can do that because the cost of networking is so cheap. If you have been around Creighton, like I have, we remember in 1992 is when we got on the internet. And the connection speed that the university has was a fraction of what you have on the cellular network on your smartphone today. And everybody on campus shared that. Okay, so the cost becomes essentially zero. It becomes cheaper. Okay. So just an example here. So in 1983, the equivalent of 100,000 transistors on an Intel processor cost you almost $4,000, and today it's almost nothing. I'd have to look on how many transistors the current Intel i5 processor has. And do you really care? If I was buying machines in the 80s and the early 90s, it was a big deal when you're looking at, I'm going to buy a 486 processor, which was the current Intel processor at the time. And do I want the 20, the 25 megahertz, the 33 megahertz? And when I was buying my first 486 processor, there was a $1,000 jump from the 25 megahertz to the 33 megahertz processor. So just to go a little bit faster was $1,000, and the only difference was the Intel processor on it. We're spoiled today by the processor. So many people don't even really care. If you look on store.apple.com, a lot of times they won't even give you the details about the type of processor it has. They're concentrating more on the operating system and things like that. You can't read this slide at all, but this kind of tells you a little bit of the history of the IBM PC and what you got for the money back in the early 80s. Just as an aside, IBM had a loan program that they offered to faculty and staff at universities. You could get a $5,000 loan from IBM on a 3-year, $5,000 over 3 years to finance buying an IBM PC in the early 80s. Can you imagine today taking out a $5,000 loan and paying it off over 3 years to buy a computer? No. And faculty here did that. Yeah. Because that was what the machines cost. So again, think about when you got on the internet, when you started surfing and getting email and things like that. So we're looking at, roughly 10 years ago. So what were you, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range? Okay. Watching Dora the Explorer, maybe. Anyway, these things weren't there. What services, Instagram, all that stuff, wasn't there? Does anybody still use Foursquare? Check in? Yeah. Okay. Facebook, Pinterest, and all that kind of stuff. All right. Let's see. As far as what businesses go, because this is a business applications of computer technology, not like a pure technology class, but why do you need to care about this stuff? Why will we spend part of a class talking about storage area networks and RAID arrays? Don't worry about what it is now. But why are we talking about RAID networks? Well, as a business professional, you might be asked to evaluate them or be part of a team looking at, do you build your own storage area network, or do you build your own cloud, or do you outsource to somebody else's cloud service? Many organizations have, in the last few years, have looked and said, do we need to run our own email servers? A lot of companies have said no, because Google, Google for work, Gmail for work basically, Microsoft with their Office 365, and there's several other competitors to them too, have made outsourcing your email so cheap, and they'll run and give you much more space. Okay. Did you guys, you're pretty much sophomores, right? Do you remember the old CU Mail before we went to Office 365? Okay. The old CU Mail, we went to, it would have been the year before you came here. As students, you had 150 megabytes of storage for email. That's nothing. That's the same amount that we gave you in 2003 when we switched to a central email system. Anybody know what you have today? I think you have 500 gig. Do you even care how much storage space you have in your Create email? Do you even think about it? No. For those of you with Gmail accounts, you have, I think Google gives you 15 gig of space for free. Do you care? Do you ever check, oh, I wonder how much space I've got in my Gmail account? No. Disk space is so cheap. Some companies like Yahoo Mail, they give you unlimited space, knowing that only a certain percentage will store, massive amounts of email. It's the old 80-20 rule. You probably had this in some statistics classes or something. 80% of the people won't cause you any grief. It's the 20% that will be the heavy users. 20% of the people will use 80% of your storage space, things like that. Think about that. If you work in tech support, the vast majority of your users will not call you very often, but there's a certain percentage, 10, 20%, that call you all the time. Okay. I know the same thing. There are certain faculty members that I think the copy machines are allergic to them. When they walk by, they jam. Okay. So there's certain things that the old 80-20 rule. The idea is that you need to know about technology to be able to participate, and maybe you'll be on a team evaluating, do we outsource our email to Microsoft or Gmail? Or why would you pick one or the other? Creighton had a couple of teams looking at this over a period of years, and we had two different teams twice recommended, well, one time each, that Creighton not run our own email servers and go to Gmail, until the legal department got a hold of it and said, well, wait a minute, Google will not guarantee that your data will stay in the United States. Google has data centers across the world. So those of you with Gmail accounts and use Google Drive for storing documents, your data could be in Ireland. They got quite a few data centers there, or some other United Kingdom country. Microsoft, however, would guarantee that your data stays in the United States. That's important to some people because the privacy laws and other laws like that are different in England versus the United States. So your Creighton email, your Creighton OneDrive data, guaranteed to stay here in the good old USA. And that's one reason why Creighton stuck with it. Also, it ties nicely with our other Microsoft licenses for Office and all the other Microsoft software that we use. Okay. So as the teams that were involved in this, part of it was looking at evaluating what are our business needs? What does that company offer? And then we get the legal people involved. So the legal people have to have some technology skills as well. Okay. All right. Job security, obviously you would like to have that. Any routine skill can be outsourced to the lowest bidder. You've all probably heard about Amazon and their robots in their warehouses. Okay. There was an article in Business Insider about robots in China taking over some of the routine assembly that the cheap labor in China is doing. And if you compare a human against a robot, they don't take coffee breaks, they don't break down as often, they don't need to go on vacation. You can work them 3 shifts a day, little downtime for maintenance, etc. So the idea is that you are going to add some value to your company, and that makes you more valuable to an employer. We'll talk a little bit about, toward the end of the class in the careers section, about certifications. One thing is, you go out and start looking at any field that you go in addition to your degree, you'll graduate Creighton with a BSBA in something. But look at certain kinds of certifications. And what a certification is a, how do I want to say it? Some kind of recognition that you have a skill in a certain area. In the IT field, there's a company called A+. And A+ is an independent computer certification organization. So for example, if you want to get in the IT field, one of the first things that you want to do is get an A+ certification in computer hardware. And so you take some training, read some books, do some stuff online, and take some standard exams, and you get an A+ certification in computer hardware. Then there's an A+ certification in networking. And this is vendor independent. Then there are certain vendor certifications, like Cisco. Cisco offers certifications in their products. So you can become a Cisco certified network engineer. Cisco certified CCNE. And that means that you have a very detailed knowledge about Cisco products in the networking environment. So you read books, you take online training, maybe you go to some classes, you take some tests, and you then can add CCNE to your resume. Let's say you're a finance person. You want to do stocks, bonds, annuities, all that stuff. The Bloomberg terminals, as you walk in, you see the stock ticker on the second floor, Harper, that room. We have 10 Bloomberg terminals in there. If you go to work in the finance industry, Bloomberg, they have some 90-some% share of the market. I can't even remember the company that competes against them, they're so small. But Bloomberg offers a certification in how to use their software. So if you're a finance major, once you get past Finance 301, and you get access to that Bloomberg room on the second floor, you probably want to take the lessons and do the training to get Bloomberg certified. Because if you're applying for a finance internship or a finance job when you graduate, and you say, I am Bloomberg certified, and your buddy next to you is not, and all things being equal, your employer is deciding between you and your buddy Bob, you've got Bloomberg certification that shows you have some extra skill. Okay? So one thing that you can look at is vendor certification or independent industry certification. I've got some MCSEs, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer certifications that are specific to Microsoft products for some of the stuff I do. I've looked at getting Apple certified, and there's a bunch of us looking at it. We may bring somebody in from Apple. The problem is, if in order to do this, I have to go somewhere for like a week or two out of town. And it'd be useful to me, but not super useful, so I really haven't pursued the Apple certification. but I got the MCSE from Microsoft a few years ago. So again, something like that could help you, in your company. Is there? Let's see. We'll also talk about in the last chapters computer systems. Well, in some of the other chapters too coming up. What is a computer system? Well, I can draw this triangle. And we can look at hardware, software, and people. So we can look at what makes up a system. So you could talk about your circulatory system in your body in biology class, right? Well, in the computer area here, we'll talk about these three components that make up an information system. Computer hardware, computer software, and people. Okay? Hardware is the physical components, things that you can touch. Your computer screen, your mouse, your printer, things like that. Computer software would be two different types of software. We could talk about operating system software and application software. So if we talk about, like the students in Dr. Corritor's class, they're trying to run OpenOffice 4.1.2. That's an application software that runs on an operating system, and we're currently finding out that Apple OS 10.11 is having issues with that version of that application software. So if I'm talking to you, and let's say you're taking stats, Business 229 with Bill Duckworth, Professor Duckworth, Bill. And Bill says you have to use JUMP. And JUMP is a statistical software package designed to teach you stats. Well, you are running on your Windows 7, your Windows 8, your Windows 10 machine, or your MacBook or MacBook Air or whatever. You're running some version of OS 10. That's your operating system. Then you're installing the application software as well. The operating system talks to the hardware. The application software is what the user interfaces, and it talks to the operating system. Think about it as a layer cake. Okay? So I'm going to get you thinking about cake. You think if you have a multi-layer cake made up of a couple different layers, you've got the computer hardware. Then when you turn your computer on, it loads the operating system. OS 10.11, Windows 10, whatever. Then you start loading application programs. You fire up Chrome. You fire up Minesweeper. You fire up Excel, Word, PowerPoint, whatever. Okay? When you're in Microsoft Word and you want to print to your color inkjet printer next to you, you go into Word, hit the print button, or go to File and Print. Word doesn't print. Word doesn't control your printer. What happens is Word tells the operating system to print, and then your operating system talks to the hardware. So when you install a new printer, Windows or your Mac, depending on, well, you guys are all Mac. So your Mac operating system, have you ever plugged in a new printer? What's the first thing it does? Is it fires up software update on your Mac, right? And goes and gets the drivers to make that printer work with that operating system. So when you are in Word, Chrome, whatever, and you say print, it tells the operating system, and then the printer prints. You don't install the printer for Microsoft Word and then install the printer for Chrome. You install it for the operating system. So when we talk about application software or operating system software, typically the application software you get from a vendor. You can write your own. The operating system software usually comes from the hardware manufacturer. Okay, when you buy an Apple, you get OS 10 from them. When you buy a Dell, they license they license Windows from Microsoft. Okay. We'll talk more about that later. In terms of computer people, we can break people down into two categories. We can say they're either a user or an administrator. Okay. So a user is just a regular person who uses a computer. They have limited rights. When you go into my computer lab, our computer lab across the hall, and you sit down at one of the public machines, and you just say, well, gee, I need to install this program so I can watch this video. And it will pop up a dialog box that says, enter administrator password. And then the buzzer goes off and the red lights and the siren. You cannot install that. You're a user. You have restricted access to the machine. And we'll see how in Chapter 6, there are different ways to lock down users. We'll call them group policies in the Microsoft world. Have you ever worked as a intern or a part-time job where you couldn't even run certain programs? You click on Start, and there's only one application you can run? Yeah, well, you might have seen that. That's where they've locked down that machine so much that the user can only do one thing. An administrator, in the broad sense, means that you can control the computer, control the operating system, change the system settings. In the Microsoft world, they call you the administrator. In the Unix world, they call you root, R-O-O-T, like root of a tree. You are the all-powerful administrator. Sometimes you'll hear the term system administrator, or they'll abbreviate it, sysadmin. Yeah. I mean, all basically the same thing. You have the authority. On your laptop that you have, if you're a Mac user, you are both a user and the administrator. The way the Macintosh operating system works, you normally run as a user, and let's say you need to download Jump for stats. You download Jump, you click on the install program, and then what does it ask you for? When you've installed programs, as soon as you start the install process, what pops up? Yep.
Allow the software to make changes on your hard drive?
Exactly. It says, are you sure you want to do this? Or basically, it's you call it a UAC, User Access Control. It's popping up asking for your administrative credentials to install that. You are becoming the administrator temporarily to install that software. Have you ever gone into system preferences on your Mac and you want to change the network settings, and there's a little padlock in the lower left-hand corner that says click to unlock, and then you have to put in your admin account password. That's to verify that you're an administrator as well. It's never a good idea to always run as administrator, because if you click on any kind of malicious program, it would automatically install. In the good old days of Windows XP, Microsoft had very limited user access control. You were either a user or an administrator, and you really couldn't go back and forth. So some programs and some users said, oh, I got to be administrator. And they would go to literally, I had one administrative assistant. She was running this certain application program, and it had to run in administrative mode. It was poorly written, but she had to run it for some reason, so I had no choice. She was running as administrator, and she went to YouTube, or she went to Google, looking for a certain clip. Nebraska football player had done something, and she wanted to show somebody else in the office, the YouTube clip. Well, instead of going to YouTube, she clicked on some malicious link by accident, installed some software on her machine because she was running as administrator. And back then, Windows XP did not say, are you sure, pop in a password or whatever. It just did it. Hosed her machine. wound up taking her out of, she couldn't use it for the full day. I had to copy her data off, format, reload, blah, blah, blah. So she lost her machine for a day, all because she clicked on the wrong link in Google. Today's operating systems, Windows 8.1, Windows 10, have done what the Mac has done for years, is user access control. Like you say, it pops up the dialog box and wants your admin credentials. That's the way it should be. And we'll see on Grackle, when you log onto a Unix machine, how you can become the administrator, and I'll show you super user, and don't worry about that until next week. But if you're an administrator or user there in the world. Obviously, representing the triangle here, without any of these legs, a computer without hardware. There's hardware somewhere. It's in the cloud. It's in your right in front of you. Without software, your computer is just a chunk of electronics. Without somebody to use it, it's no good. You guys, do you collaborate? Do you share? Have you created any groups in Office 365? Do you know that you could do that? As sophomores, you probably don't do a lot of group projects yet. Wait till you get in your upper level senior classes. So when you're in the upper level marketing, instead of a final exam in the marketing case class, you'll probably do a project. If you take advertising and promotion with Dr. Brian Johnson, he will, part of your class, a big chunk of your grade, is an advertising campaign, and you work as a team. So as you're working as a team trying to share documents, in my day it was passing around handwritten notes and typing them up later. Then it became emailing Word documents to each other. Well, nowadays you just go on to Google Docs, Microsoft OneDrive, your Dropbox, and share it and collaborate online. In terms of, let me ask you this in the audience here. In terms of cloud drive storage, how many people really use their Microsoft OneDrive that Creighton gives you? No? Anybody use personal OneDrive? Outlook.com? No? How many Google Drive users? Okay. Cool. 3 of us? Okay. We'll all meet in the phone booth. Yeah. Anyway, Dropbox? Okay. Amazon Cloud Storage? No cloud storage at all? Okay, who's using any cloud storage to share stuff? Well, okay, so yeah, the rest of you should be right. Yeah, okay. So it seems like most of you guys aren't, and I think as you progress and as you need to share more stuff with people, you'll probably start using. I talked to some of the other faculty that teach upper level classes, and Google Drive is real popular because until Creighton joined up with Office 365, we didn't have a way of providing you that storage. So I think what's going to happen is in the next year or two, students are going to start using Office 365 and the OneDrive feature more instead of passing around flash drives and things like that. Okay, I already talked about experimenting. Have you seen this? People are they're afraid of clicking on something that they'll break it. I've seen that before. They're afraid to start messing around. I don't break what I've got. Okay. Save the file, work on a copy, go from there as well. Here's just a chart kind of showing you where technology fields, things like that are growing. And you can see that in the book. We don't need to worry about that. So what's the whole bottom line here? Why do we spend some time talking about this? As you get in the job market, as you work as interns, get your first full-time jobs, you may not work in the IT department, but you are going to have some IT functions, things that you're going to have to work with, okay? Or you have to work with the IT people. You need to know some things about it. You need to be able to experiment, work along, maybe look at some certifications depending on what area you want to get into. So, as the other part of Chapter 1, from David Kroenke here, our author, what is an information system? Okay. I've got hardware, software, and people. Well, he adds two components to it as well. He adds data and procedure. So what he's talking about here, the data. What's the difference between data and information? Okay. Data is not just a character in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Data, we're talking about raw facts. So think about Walmart. They keep track of every single transaction. Every time you go into Walmart and buy something, okay, you go buy candy hearts because it's that time of the year and they're really good. Okay. You go in and buy pop. You buy, Pop-Tarts, cereal, oatmeal. They keep track of every single transaction. What's a transaction? If you haven't had accounting 201 or 202 yet, okay, a transaction is a business event. You are exchanging, you go down to 20, the new China Taste is open. For those of you that like Chinese, right across 24th and Cumming, where they're building that new medical building, there was a strip mall. And there was a Chinese restaurant in there called China Taste. Well, they tore the strip mall down. They've reopened at 17th and Cummings. And same people, they kept the same prices. They're back. We love going there. So I go down to China Taste, and I give them $5.25 for the lunch special broccoli chicken. If you like broccoli, it's really good. Okay. So I give them, it's actually $5.65 with tax, and I get lunch special number 5, the broccoli chicken. That's a business transaction. I've exchanged money for lunch special 5. You go to 24th and Cumming, go into McDonald's, you give them $3.99 for value meal number 2. Okay, whatever. Same thing. So you exchange some money for goods and services. Those transactions are recorded. That becomes data. At some point, Walmart or an executive of the company or you in your business will take that data and process it somehow, and that turns it into information. So information is processed data. You do statistical analysis on it. Toward the end of class, we'll talk about data mining. Companies like Walmart have huge amounts of data. What do you do with that? Think about companies like Baker's, grocery store in town, that have those loyalty cards. You ever wonder why the supermarkets have you, if you go to Hy-Vee, it's the fuel saver. Family Fare has, they're a chain of grocery stores in this area. They've got some kind of gas credit card, gas discount card. Baker's has a card, etc. Anybody go to Raising Cane's, the chicken fingers? Yeah, awesome. Okay, yeah. If you join have you joined the Caniac Club? If you go to Raising Cane's more than a few times, join the Caniac Club. Ask them for a card when you're there. Register it online. They send you specials. Free lemonade, 2-for-1 box deals a couple times a year, which is great. Anyway, why do they do that? Well, yeah.
I hear it costs 6 times more to get a new customer than to keep an old one.
Exactly. Yeah. To keep you coming back, because they know the more you go to Raising Cane's, the more likely you are to get the specials. There's a new pizza place that came into town called Pie 5. A couple of them around, and they've got the same loyalty card. Email you specials and things like that. It's double points Tuesdays, things like that. The idea then is also to get to know what you're buying and keep track of that as well. So they have that, and they encourage you to come back for loyalty, and they can then keep track of what you're doing as an individual. They may not care that every time I go to Raising Cane's I get an extra sauce or something like that. But what they can do is get an aggregate of the customers and then start looking at other data and compare it to geographic, to zip codes, and things like that. You get United States Census data, and if you go to Walmart at 72nd and Hickory, zip code 68106, I think is what it is, and they can look at the census data for the demographic area and try to find out how are the sales there different than they are in Lake Manawa, Iowa, okay, which is a different census zone, and try to build some trends and things like that. So there is an actual big data class that usually Dr. Ravi Nath teaches in data mining using statistical software to go in with millions and billions of transaction records that these big companies have. Taking that raw data, turning it into information to make business decisions with. Okay. Then, what's a procedure? Well, this is how you do a business process. Think about how you get your net ID. At some point, Creighton decided to give you TMB 75352, which is my net ID. So how do I get a net ID as an employee differ than how you guys get a net ID as a student? Well, from an employee standpoint, the way you get a net ID, the procedure, the process here, is it starts with somebody on campus hiring you. So let's say that we're going to hire somebody to be a assistant to the dean. Okay? So we have a job open, a set of skills that assistant to the dean position needs. They interview, they hire Jane Smith. Jane is the new assistant to the dean. She goes to human resources and completes all the paperwork there. Proves that letters of reference, your bank account for direct deposit for your paycheck, the I-9 citizenship thing, references, all the stuff that you need to get hired as a full-time employee. And then once that happens, HR fills a process would do it, and they get a net ID. Part of that process is to say, has this person ever had a net ID before? Were you a student here and graduated and came back 5 years to work at Creighton later? Well, you don't get a new net ID, you get the same one. It's just reactivated. So the process of getting a net ID for a new employee is like that. As a student, once you are accepted by the university, I'm not sure exactly how it happens, but somewhere in there, once you are accepted, because you've already sent a deposit in, or is it the other way around? At some point, you are coming to Creighton, they give you a net ID. Once DoIT assigns you a net ID, along with that comes an email account. Along with that email account, some other things are generated. So what's the process? How does that happen? What is the process when a person quits Creighton? Or when they are fired? Okay. How does that net ID, is it disabled or deleted? Well, a net ID is never deleted. Okay. It's disabled because you may come back to work for Creighton 10 years down the road. Or you might come back as, let's say you graduate. Well, you will graduate. You decide to come back in 15 years to get a master's. Well, we'll just reactivate your net ID. The idea is that is your network identifier. That's what net ID stands for. And that will always identify you, that one unique thing about you. You may be Jane Smith right now. Maybe you get married and change your name to Jane Johnson. Okay. But your net ID will never change. Okay. Maybe you are Bruce Jenner, and your net ID is something, and now you are Caitlin. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. We're at the end of class. I'll leave you with that note. So you are now Caitlin Jenner, but your net ID will never change because that is the one unique identifier of you. Okay, so what we'll do is, if you will look at the command line module, please take a look at that, and we'll do, bring your laptops with you for sure Tuesday and Thursday of next week, because we'll be logging on to our Unix server. I'll have your accounts ready and everything. I will see you guys then. Have a good weekend.